Jason, did you want me to go ahead and kick us off, even though we don't have anybody here yet, just to let the public know what's going on?
Uh, yes, I think we're ready to go.
Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, June 12th Committee of the Whole. We have one item on the agenda. It's a presentation from the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. They will be presenting an update, and I will turn this over to Mary Jane Van Cleve to get us started. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. We do apologize. Our representatives from King County Regional Homeless Authority are stuck in traffic. They're a little behind, and as soon as they're here, they will begin the presentation. So if we may just have a pause until they're here.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Oh, I didn't realize. Sorry.
Councilmember Rivera, apparently you were correct.
Yes, I was. Heavier than normal.
The traffic indeed is bad.
I should have my own show.
Yes, we apologize.
We have enough bad reality TV on.
We'll recess for 15 minutes or 20 minutes if you'd like to.
Hold on. Hold your horses.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, here we go. All right, good to go.
All right, thank you, Council. We will hand this over to our representatives from King County. This is Alexis and Abby. They'll go take it from here.
Thank you. If you need a moment to just get settled, please feel free.
Appreciate it, and apologies for being a smidgen late, Council. Really pleased to be before you all today, and thank you for the bit of grace. My name is Alexis Mercedes Rink. I use she, her pronouns, and this is my colleague, Abby, our South King County planner.
Hi all, Abby. I use she or they pronouns. Nice to meet you.
Is up.
It'll pull up.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we're here today to provide an update on our progress at the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, as well as talk about the now approved 5-year plan as approved by our boards just a couple weeks ago. Very excited to also talk a bit around South King County sub-regional implementation plans, which is a process that's just now starting. We do have some questions for you all regarding how we can move forward with your input as we move towards developing these in service of South King County. And with that, I am going to take us away on the presentation when we're ready. Fabulous. Thank you. So we'll be covering just a brief organizational update as well, just to get you all oriented to who we are as an agency and what our specific role is, because it's a little funky. And with that, then we'll go into the approved 5-year plan and walk you all through some of the content and then discuss sub-regional implementation plans. Oops. There we are. So starting us off, our key theory of change is that if we create a homelessness response system that centers the voices of people with lived experience, then we'll be able to meet needs and eliminate inequities in order to end homelessness for all. And we really try to begin with that statement in presentations and work groups and the work that we do, just to really ground us in to this approach. And as a reminder that it's a consistent practice, something that we are always building upon and trying to innovate as we work towards addressing homelessness in King County. Taking us to a little bit about how we got here, so a bit of history. And I know, I believe the last time I was before you all was a subcommittee, maybe in 2021, so it's been a little bit. Just to provide a refresher on background related to KCRHA, this work began in 2018. That's when a consulting group known as the National Innovation Service was brought on board to evaluate King County's homelessness response system. And what they found was that King County had a fragmented homelessness response system. And one of the key recommendations out of that work was to consolidate homelessness response under a singular entity. And so with that recommendation, throughout 2019, the work to try and design and establish the King County Regional Homelessness Authority began. And through an approval process of the legislation between the Regional Policy Committee, King County Council, and Seattle City Council, the KCRHA, as we know it, was established through an interlocal agreement in December 2019. 2020 was meant to be the year that everything was stood up. And as we know, 2020 didn't go the way anybody expected. A lot of the work to stand up the authority was put a little bit on the back burner to make way for other important work related to COVID response. And that brought us to then 2021. Our inaugural CEO was brought on board in April with initial executive team members hired. And then 2022 at the very, very start was when all the contracts officially rolled over to us and we began really administering the system. And as we've been moving in 2023, we've been focused on service redesign, the 5-year plan, and trying to really adjust our business operations as we continue to work towards systems change. Taking us then to just to get very, very clear on what our specific role is when it comes to homelessness response in King County. This handy graph that I myself refer to sometimes, just to lay out what are some of the key bodies of work that have that were migrated over to us from City of Seattle and King County. As you can see by this chart, housing capital and development is not something that is in our role and scope, but rather we are the lead public funder in programs related to shelter, diversion, rapid rehousing, outreach, and so on. We also oversee the data system known as Homelessness Management Information System, HMIS, and we oversee the coordinated entry system, which facilitates permanent housing placements. We are not as much in the lane. We are not lead on encampment cleaning or that hygiene piece. We're not lead in behavioral health, but as you'll learn through our presentation today, we do correspond and work with behavioral health partners as well, knowing that there's a clear cross-section in addressing homelessness. And so just to distill it even clearer, we are a special jurisdiction government agency, so we are a governmental entity. We are an agency that receives and administers public funding and are an administrator of programs and policies, and we partner with public and private organizations. We are not underneath King County DCHS or the Seattle Human Services Department. We do not have the ability to levy taxes. A little bit about our progress to date. We have been able to, as a system administrator, more than 5,600 individuals, couples, and families moved into permanent housing in 2022. This information is available on our publicly facing dashboards on our website. Throughout 2022, we engaged over 1,000 people through a project known as the Understanding Unsheltered Homelessness Project, where we interviewed people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, but then also engaged community partners, human services planners, faith-based partners, and our service provider partners in the development of the 5-year plan. And we'll talk more about that shortly. Also want to take a moment to celebrate the resounding success of this region for fully utilizing the emergency housing vouchers that were provided through the American Rescue Plan. This housing resource offers 10 years of housing affordability. King County's allocation was about 1,400 vouchers, and this region, through partnership with the 3 housing authorities, Renton Housing Authority, for example, but also King County Housing Authority and Seattle Housing Authority, working with us, those housing authorities and service providers were able to match individuals with those vouchers and successfully lease up. So that's 10 years of housing affordability for 1,400 households. And this is nearly twice the utilization rate of peer communities such as LA, New York, and so on. We're working on launching re-procurement work and then also ensuring that encampment resolutions are focused on housing and continuing to work on improving our coordination around severe weather response. A little bit, we're going to pivot into some 5-year plan, and I'll talk a bit around process, and then we'll start talking a bit about the content within the plan. This process began throughout summer 2022. We began with community engagement across King County with holding workshops within subregions, with system partners, and also focused on subpopulations. With that, we started developing content with community review. We had our South King County city staff partners weigh in throughout the process as we were developing the initiatives that are in the plan. And then in January 2023, that's when we had our first release of a draft plan and a very robust public comment period, from engaging with and receiving some city letters, while also engaging with city staff in our regular standing spaces. We had provider leadership lunch and learns and feedback sessions. And we also had a survey that went out to the broad public where we received 640 responses. The sub-regional planning team read through every response and all attached 2,000 comments to code and try and really take into and hear what our community was saying about this plan to address homelessness. What followed was a dramatic restructuring of the plan in service of everything that we had heard from all of those different stakeholders. And with that restructured and revised plan, May and June had been working with our boards. We have an implementation board and governing committee that needed to approve the plan. And very happy to share that we received unanimous approval by both the implementation board and the governing committee just in the past couple weeks. So our team is celebrating that moment of success. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Abby to start talking us through the content within the 5-year plan.
So I'm going to walk through the plan. We're going to walk through it in 3 sections. The first section looks at the scope and scale of the issue, and this mirrors the actual 5-year plan, which is available on our website for anyone to read. And I'd be happy to send it to you all after this as well. So the first section, like I said, looks at the scope and scale of the issue. So how many people are experiencing homelessness? Who are those people that are experiencing homelessness? And then what are the limitations and how do we work in memoriam of those that we have lost? So moving to the first slide on this, there are a lot of different ways to enumerate homelessness. You can look at statistical projections. You can use administrative data sets such as the Homelessness Management Information System, as Alexis mentioned before. You can look at the number of folks who have experienced homelessness over the course of a year or one point in time, such as the point in time count that happens in January. But what we know is that regardless of the way that we measure homelessness or the number of people that we determine to be experiencing homelessness, our system does not have enough temporary housing or sheltering options to meet that need. Looking specifically at South King County, we also want to look across the whole region as the Regional Homelessness Authority and as the South King County Sub-Regional Planner. This is primarily where our work begins, is assessing who's experiencing homelessness and what does homelessness look like in each of the sub-regions. You can see here that South King County has 10 service providers that offer emergency shelter in this area. 2 of those welcome drop-in guests to give you a little bit of an understanding of kind of where folks have the ability to go on any given night if they do find themselves experiencing homelessness. In South, you can also see on that chart that there are 568 emergency shelter beds, which makes up about 12% of the overall population or overall beds countywide. You can go to the next slide. Also important in planning our homelessness response and understanding who is experiencing homelessness is understanding the systemic barriers that folks experiencing homelessness are facing. So here we're looking primarily at race and ethnicity data and honing in on some of the numbers here. I'll explain the chart first. So the sort of lighter teal color is the 2020 point in time count, the number of folks experiencing homelessness then. And then the darker blue bars is the 2022 point in time count. The dashed horizontal lines represent that same demographic across all of King County. So you can see, for example, the American Indian, Alaska Native have 1% of the overall population. However, 15 or 9, depending on the years you're looking at, of the folks experiencing homelessness. So understanding these disproportionate rates helps us to plan for the homelessness, our homelessness response system, and better understand who's experiencing homelessness so we can better meet their needs. All right, and then the last bit of this first section looks at the number of folks who have died while experiencing homelessness. In 2022, 310 of our unhoused neighbors died while experiencing homelessness in King County, and that number is already over 140 individuals for this year, 2023. We want to always center these statistics to remember that our work involves human lives, and to not only work with lived experience of those who are still with us, but also with lived experience of those that we have lost and try to do better and prevent further death. With that, we can move to the second section of the 5-year plan, which looks at kind of how our current state is operating in the homelessness system and what that ideal future state will look like. We have broken this section up into 3 sections as well. The first one being our current service provider organization. So looking at this sort of level of the homelessness response system, we are asked to consider things such as staffing and wages, the different data and reporting requirements of different service provider orgs, the funding and training available to them, and then also in recognition that there's increased acuity and increased overdose deaths, which not only makes their work more challenging to to help serve those people, but also because in recognition that working with this population can cause extreme trauma and burnout. And so wanting to make sure that we're supporting our service providers and those on the doing direct service. So the next sort of level of the homelessness response system is the network of homelessness services. So this level asks us to consider things such as how services are sharing data between different providers, how referral pathways are working. So if someone is encountered by an outreach worker, how they can be best referred into the best type of shelter to meet their needs. And then maybe from there, they go to a different type of shelter. And so making sure that those pathways are clear and accessible. We also look at sub-regional gaps and subpopulation gaps, again, to understand the different experience of homelessness across identity and across geography. And then always looking at how our programs are faring and how the system is operating and how we can increase coordination within this level. So the last level is the system to system connection. So we are the homelessness response system, but we want to see how folks experiencing homelessness are also interacting with other systems such as the healthcare system, carceral, education, foster care, all of those types of things. So looking at how we can better have collaboration and alignment, and how we can make sure that those systems are connected so that if someone's experiencing homelessness and is connected to one of those systems, how they can best connect with us, the homelessness response system, to make sure people are not falling through the gaps. We can achieve this through data sharing and transparency, accountability and role clarity, and then making sure that we are coordinated on our funding sources to use them in the most strategic way possible. So looking at those three levels, we've also set up what we consider to be the ideal system state, which is that every service provider has what they need to adequately hire and retain trained staff, and then can carry out best practices when working with clients. That all service providers are coordinated through data, every subregion has what it needs, and all disproportionately impacted subpopulations are served. And then at the system-to-system level, that there are no missed opportunities to intercept someone before they become homeless, and that we're encouraging supportive transitions between systems. And with that, I'll hand it back to Alexis for the third section of the plan.
Thanks, Abby. And so that third section of the plan really gets clear on how do we get to that state, and starts really diving into the action steps and what KCRHA is going to be taking up over the next 5 years to be building towards that ideal system state. And so in this section, we detail our one overall goal, key metrics, and then the activities that we'll be taking up. And also within this section, we detail our funding strategy shift and how we're working towards better leveraging our dollars and what we're doing within our existing budget, but where we will put our next dollar should new funding become available. And so within this section, our one overall goal is to bring unsheltered people inside as quickly as possible to prevent death and further harm. As detailed earlier in this presentation, it's pretty front of mind for our team, and our boards agreed with us in this. We want to make sure that we are moving quickly with what we have. And so some of the key metrics for success and within this section, and something that we are able to track within our data systems, is consistently evaluating how many folks are accessing the homelessness response system and also entering into the homelessness response system, while also monitoring how many folks are exiting into a permanent housing option, and then rates of return to homelessness after 6, 12, and 24 months. We'll be monitoring the number of temporary and permanent housing units in the system, while also looking at throughput of those units. So essentially, how quickly are we having folks move through the system as efficiently as possible? And where possible, we'll also be measuring these by and breaking them down by household type. So looking at single adults, families with children, youth, young adults, race and ethnicity, and then program type, as we do administer a number of different programs. Within the plan, and to save you all some time because I know we're talking a lot, there are about 70 plus activities detailed within the plan. So to spare you all from me talking more, I wanted to at least show a snapshot of what you all can expect to see. The plan breaks down these activities and orders them by years. And so there's an initial table in the plan that really details like what are our years 1 and 2 activities, and then a years 3 through 5 activities. This was our team's way of really trying to make sense of what activities need to come first in the plan. And you'll see they're organized by the key action, the kind of topic area that action concerns. We have an impact statement, which really really explains how that key action will drive towards improving the metrics that you all saw on the previous slide, and then the status of that activity. And so with that, there are 3 tables that you will see in the plan. And it's important to uplift that the first 2 tables, so the table of activities for years 1 and 2, and then activities for years 3 through 5, are both written in the context of what we're able to do within our current budget and assuming no programmatic budget increases. So we wanted to be able to really ground in what a realistic future looks like moving forward and what we can do within our current budget. There's a 3rd table within the plan that also identifies our go-for strategies for funding. So where would KCRHA invest in first should new funding become available? And this was in clear service of what we had heard from community partners. There were a number of...
Gary got very involved. I'm very sorry.
Not a problem. I'm glad she's listening. But with that, a number of things that came through the community engagement process were identified as clear, good strategies, but needed to be, we just identified that it would require new funding in order to be able to fulfill that. So with that, we know that the 5-year plan serves as a critical strategic roadmap for how we're going to transform the system, but there's a number of elements within the plan that absolutely need to be tailored as appropriate for each subregion, and that is the key role that the South King County Subregional Implementation Plan will play. What does it mean to act on these goals in South King County? So I'll turn it back to Abby.
So the subregional plans will do have already 6 main sections. So we'll walk through kind of an overview of the introduction of the 5-year plan and recognition that they were inextricably linked. Then talk about the engagement and development process for both the 5-year plan and subregional plans. We have subregional analytics that look at the different shelter types and different severe weather responses and things like that throughout the region. We will have a section that talks about how we are aligning this plan with the comprehensive plans that we know all the cities are working really hard on. And then a discussion on different resources and investments contributed to the homelessness system by each subregion. And then finally, the real meat of the plan and what we're working really hard on this year is to identify the key actions and timelines for the 30+ activities that we've determined need to be tailored to each subregion. And we'll talk a little bit more about that right now. So the 30 activities, we worked in partnership. I've been working with the city human services staff as well as service providers and folks that attend the Homelessness Action Committee space. Has kind of become the hub for subregional planning in South King County. And so we work to identify which activities need to be tailored to each subregion, to the South King County subregion, in order for them to be most successful. So we've identified those 30, and the remaining 40+ activities are simply things that either require region-wide standardization, which harps back to why we exist in the first place, to make sure some things are really coordinated across the whole region, or they are simply KCRHA administrative tasks that we need to do in-house. So for each of those 30 activities, action steps and timelines will be developed in partnership with South King County community. And I have, perfect. So we've created some of these subject matter working groups. We have over 230 individuals identified so far, specifically for South King County to be involved in these different working groups. And each working group will be tasked with a certain set of activities from the 5-year plan that then will be tailored and have action steps and timelines associated with them for the sub-regional plan. So these are subject matter expertise, either through lived experience or professional experience, contributing to the development of these activities. And I have a sample activity for you. And this is just an example. We haven't started the work of writing down all of the action steps and timelines yet, but just by way of example, this is one of the activities that was selected to be tailored to each subregion, and it involves our Ombuds office, which is an office that already exists within KCRHA, and we're working on fine-tuning some of the different policies and procedures that office does. And so this activity is requiring us to ensure that the Ombuds Office is well known and easily accessible, and including the creation of a centralized contact mechanism. So this was determined that, the getting the word out and making it easily accessible is something that might look different in each subregion. So that's why it was selected to be tailored to each subregion. And an example of what the action steps might look like is that we might educate the South King community on what the Ombuds Office is, and then therefore identify stakeholders to convene that would be the best to develop a strategy. We'd hope to deploy that strategy in a given timeline. This is just an example, but January 2025, with perhaps review and enhancement 1 year following the deployment of that. So this is just kind of how we're envisioning the action steps looking once the plan's complete. And so our last slide here is really looking back to you all and saying, what do you want to see in the sub-regional implementation plans? How heavily do you want to be involved? What level of guidance do you think is appropriate to include in the plans? And do you have any key stakeholders that we should engage throughout the plan process to add to that list of 230 folks? So I know that we just did a lot of talking and information sharing, and so no pressure to respond to these now, but I do want to say we're open to hearing from you all on what you would like to see in those plans and working in partnership, and that can happen now or via email later. So I will pause there for any questions.
Yes, please.
I do have a question. Referring back to, and one first, thank you for this incredible presentation. I also came directly from Seattle traffic and ran in here maybe just a few minutes before you. So I'm glad you made it. In regards to the slide, slide number 11, in terms of who is experiencing homelessness, is the percentage of beds proportional to the houseless populations that these different regions are experiencing? Because it just seems like Seattle obviously has the majority of beds, and I know this is a problem that we love to just pin on Seattle and blame Seattle for. However, I agree it's very much a regional approach. We're all neighbors. We all have to work together to make this effective solution. Are we carrying our weight in terms of beds in our region?
That's a fantastic question with a very complex answer. And so I will do my best to do it justice. And I'll talk a little bit about HMIS, that homelessness management information system, to try and get us there. Within that information system, when folks will be doing intake, there is a question related to city of last residence. That is our best indicator in the data system as to where somebody was last stably housed. And so something our team has been working on is working to develop like a monthly dashboard to show us approximately with geographic representation where like a South King County dashboard, for example, how many folks are saying that their last stable place of residence was a South King County city. So that's something I think we could follow up to get a deliberate number on. As you can imagine, those numbers tend to flex. And with that, it's also there's a lot underneath that data point, because that could mean somebody lived in, for example, city of Tukwila for a couple of months, but maybe they're originally from Shoreline. So there's a lot underneath that data point. And something that our team has been trying to work on is looking at, like, when we do talk to folks, trying to understand where is the community that they do call home. So I think we can commit to following up with, for example, like the South King County number. I know we're working on getting those dashboards stood up, and I have an update in my email inbox right now about that. But I think the unfortunate answer here is that it's complicated, but something that our team is committed to trying to unearth through centering the voices of those with lived experience. We want to get folks matched and able to access services in their home community.
I would also just add that across the region, we know that there are not enough shelter resources to meet the need. And so not even looking at the different subregions, but just in recognition that that is something, every subregion could use more resources in that regard.
I have a request. If you could move to, I believe it's slide number 13. Yes. Actually, no. Go up one to 12. Would it be possible for us to get this?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody? Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thanks again for the presentation. Actually, if we can go back to slide 13, that would be perfect, because that's the one my question was on. So I was curious first of all, I think these numbers are striking, especially the trend should cause everyone's a significant amount of alarm. particularly within 2022. I'm curious, I'm assuming within accidental deaths that would include overdose. Is there a breakout as far as what percentage of those we can be attributed to that? I would wager it's a pretty big explanation for the increase there. And then the other one I was curious about on that within 22 as well, it's not labeled, is it the yellow stripe that's there, what that one might be for?
Actually know that. I just spent time with this right before we came here. So I don't know the exact percentage, but you are correct that overdose deaths are included in the accident category. And I know that it is the largest sort of subcategory within accident. And I can get you the actual percentage of that as well. And then that little thing, the little yellow line in 2022 it was something like unknown, or they're still determining the cause of death. So it's a very small percentage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think to build on that just very quickly, there's two big dashboards that our team has been looking at. This one is through the King County Medical Examiners, and it focuses explicitly on people experiencing homelessness, but also want to voice that there's a dashboard held by Public Health, the overdose dashboard, that does discuss and include information related to overdose and attributed to what specific substances as well. So happy to provide that link as well in a follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council President, thank you for your presentation. I have a question on page 27, and thank you so much for making sure that subject matter working groups is as inclusive as possible. I noticed that these are just examples, but I was just wondering, of the 230 individuals plus that you mentioned, I'm just assuming there are, but I just wanted to know from you, in terms of veterans experiencing homelessness and those of ANHPI communities. I know we have Native and Indigenous here, so Native Hawaiian could be a part of that, but just curious in terms of the ANHPI and the veteran community.
Yes, yeah, we do have a veterans working group and an AAPI working group. And if you have any people that you think would be a good fit to be on it, I would love to have their contact info. So I'll follow up with you later. Yeah.
Yes.
So following up with Councilmember McIrvin's question, thank you. I also had that same question. And going back to slide 13, does your office have any data-driven theories and thoughtful causations or correlations onto the huge increase we see from 2021 to 2022 in deaths, particularly accidental deaths and overdose?
Fantastic question. And with
For 2021 and 2022? Yeah, that was the jump I meant. Thank you.
Yes. To that end, in terms of data-driven from the perspective of any type of like quantitative data sets, that's not something we have handy. What I would share is our team's just experience also talking with folks, which understanding that, that maybe that's not specifically the data point you're looking for, but would voice that when we do talk to our unhoused neighbors, both from East King County, South King County, North King County to Seattle, a lot of folks voicing, just the rise also in seeing more fentanyl and having more friends and partners, peers that have been increasing their use. And so that's the most I could probably provide at this time, is just what we're hearing. Our team does try to go out just to talk to folks to better understand how they might be accessing services, what's not working for them or what is. And that is something more and more increasingly people want to share with us, is what they're seeing when it comes to the substances that they do see around the streets.
Thank you so much.
I have a question. Thank you very much for the presentation and all of the information. Do you have any kind of a working relationship with the Renton Housing Authority? I know you mentioned the fact that there is a housing authority, but what is specifically is your relationship with them, if any?
Absolutely. So when we were working on the emergency housing voucher specifically, our coordinated entry team was corresponding with the Renton Housing Authority throughout that process. That is the most clear, deliberate touch point that I could probably name. And so happy to follow up to get clear on who explicitly the point of contact was. But I know there was close collaboration on that point between our coordinated entry team, who was lead on working on the emergency housing vouchers.
Because I am aware that the RHA has an extensive waiting list also, so.
The only other thing I'll add is that they have been brought up multiple times in the sub-regional planning process. And so they are, will have a representation in that subject matter working groups. Yeah.
Anything else? So, just to follow up on your head shake, what is your relationship, if any, with South King Housing and Homelessness Partners?
Yeah, we work very closely with Skip and meet with both Claire and Dorsal. I guess I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but lately we have been meeting with them on a regular basis. And so we have been talking a lot. They just, I know, are finishing up or starting, I guess, the implementation of their work plans. And so I have been following that process closely. And we work really closely, especially to understand kind of when issues of homelessness come up in their meetings, to be flagging it for us. And I believe we are scheduled to go present to them next month to the executive board.
Do you get a sense that there's redundancy there?
I actually think that Claire is working hard to try and eliminate redundancy. And I think that's part of the reason we've had several meetings lately, and to have them be really focused on that more homelessness prevention when you're looking at affordable housing and things like that. And Claire's made that a real big priority of hers coming into that role. And so that helps us then to be able to focus on kind of more of that crisis response role in the homelessness system.
Absolutely. And I think the only thing I'd add is pretty early when I came into this role with the previous ED, Angela Sanfilippo, that was a very early conversation, given that Skip's title quite literally has the word homelessness in it. And I had met with her early on to say, let's make sure that we are being additive and complementary rather than overstepping. And so I know we're slated to present to them soon, the Skip Executive Board, but want to voice that won't be the first time. We've presented a couple of times now, including their advisory board. So
And just a point of clarification, the reason I ask is because you had that one slide where it says, make sure we don't miss any opportunities for a person who might slip into homelessness. And so that's where it seems to be a little bit of a, yeah. Okay. Anything else? Come on, we can't let them off this easy. They drove all this way.
I do have one more.
Oh, you have one more.
I do have one more, of course. I really appreciate earlier in your slides you mentioned working on wages and staffing in regards to the partners in terms of this infrastructure you're building. I used to work for King County in social services, and understanding that nonprofits really do not get, those who work in nonprofits don't get paid in the same way as those who work for King County or even those who work for the state. So when I saw that, it was interesting to me, and I'm curious, how and what is your office doing to help with those wages and staffings for those nonprofits and other organizations that have less resources than King County?
fantastic question that I would love to nerd out on, actually. So with this, you will notice in the 5-year plan, we do have an initiative related towards implementing wage equity. We know that the wage equity reports that have come out through UW have illuminated some of the challenges in the human services sector. And it's an action item within our 5-year plan that, from our perspective, can be accomplished in a couple of ways. That will need to be carefully worked on in partnership with our service providers. We know that to deal with and to adjust the sector in such a way where we're moving towards ultimately having requirements around wages for frontline staff, we need to work to understand also each of the individual organizations like HR structures. So to ensure that we have a steady transition throughout the process. So we want to be working in partnership with service providers to develop a transition plan across the years that takes into account exactly that piece, like making sure that we understand the complexities of everybody's HR processes and set a realistic timeline for like a phased transition. That paired with, of course, continuing to advocate for additional funding to be able to supplement that work. Between those two elements is how we'd like to see us ultimately restructuring the sector and hopefully serving as an example in that process.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes, please.
thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for coming and being with us today. I'm going to ask a question that I asked 9 years ago when I had a presentation of how the 10-year plan didn't work and why we were having now a new 5-year plan, then no plan, another 5-year plan again. And I did ask, how success looks like. When are we going to get a statistic that say we used to have this many people that were homeless and this many we have helped and this many now they're in a better path? When are we going to have statistics that look the trend of people that are dying of abuse or any kind of I don't know, health problem that they have, that we have been able to help? And because every single time that I hear these presentations, it's about money, and I do understand that. But money has, even though has been an issue, I don't remember any city that has said we should not be putting money into this. Even the state has the biggest commitment that I have seen in the last budget. So again, how success is going to look like, and when you guys are going to come back and show statistics that present numbers that whatever we're doing now is finally working. Thank you.
Really appreciate that question, council member. I think at this juncture, I'd voice the bit of optimism that I know our team carries as we move forward in this effort. And I think we faced this question a few times in candor. What is different about this entity? This is the first time this region has had a fully centralized homelessness response, and working on increasingly centralizing that response. We're optimistic, and part of the reason this team exists in particular is to be keeping a careful eye towards how we work across the subregions and in partnership with cities to be having a tailored response. And so to that end, we have some information on our websites in terms of, you can look at progress in terms of across the years for how many folks the system is housing folks into permanent housing. But we're really excited to be able to provide a sub-regional lens to that and also be working on developing those tailored strategies. And so with this 5-year plan, we have these clear metrics that we are going to be reporting on quite regularly across the 5 years of the plan. These are the big kind of ones that we're looking at. And so very excited to be doing exactly what you just said, council member, being able to come back and talk about what is our progress on these key metrics. How are we doing as a region? And also how are we improving our coordination and our approaches as appropriate in every part of King County?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and coming all the way down here. And I super appreciate it. All the information was very informative and helpful. And I hope that you have less of an investment of your personal time to get back wherever it is you are heading. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We are adjourned.